It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. And next week is National School Choice Week. And we're joined on the line this morning by Andrew Campanella to talk about it. Our conversation is brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. And Andrew, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I'm happy to have you on the program today to talk about National School Choice Week. Help us to frame the whole idea of school choice, because we hear it a lot. I don't think a whole lot of people understand what school choice is all about.
Sure. So school choice means families looking for schools and learning environments that best meet the needs of their individual daughters and sons. So that means looking around at traditional public schools, public charter schools, public magnet schools, private and faith-based schools, online learning and homeschooling to find a school or learning environment that is the right fit for your child. So when we talk about school choice at National School Choice Week, we use this broad description of all the options that families have or want to have.
When we think about schools, particularly public schools, which are where most of the students go, it's really geographically based, but I take it your position is it doesn't need to be just geographical.
Well, that's exactly right, and families should have as many options as possible so they can find a school that meets their child's needs, because what might be a good school for one student is not necessarily going to be a good fit for another. And what we think is, when it comes to public education, allowing families to choose schools outside of their zones or districts can exponentially increase the number of choices they have.
What does the state of Pennsylvania look like in terms of its ability or its offerings when it comes to school choice? Is this a friendly state for school choice?
It really is. Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, was one of the pioneers in expanding options for families and has continued to do so. There are options for families to transfer to different public schools. There's a lot of public charter schools. There are public magnet schools that focus on themes like math, science, technology, and the performing arts. There are private schools, and the state has several scholarship programs allowing families to access private schools with tuition assistance. A variety of online public schools, I believe more online public schools in Pennsylvania than any other state, and a flexible homeschooling law. So those are 6 options right there for Keystone State families.
That's a lot of options, and as we think about it, there have to be some impediments to school choice as well. Is Pennsylvania pretty strong in that regard?
Pennsylvania, I would say, is an incredibly strong state when it comes to offering families options. Of course, there could always be more options and more access available. And what I would say the weaknesses are for Keystone State families is there are not enough open enrollment policies in the state, and there needs to be more access to other district schools outside of your district or outside of your zone.
People wonder about who pays if a student from school district A decides I'm a better fit over at school district L, school district G, or whatever that happens to be, some other school district, and yet I'm going to remain in my home here. There's transportation costs. There are other costs associated with me getting to school there. How do people in Pennsylvania bear that cost?
That is a good question. Every state handles it differently. I'm not exactly sure how the funding mechanism works with a public school transfer. Other states handle it in a variety of different ways. For example, the district that receives the student might get the funding or a portion of the funding. In some cases, it is state-funded. In some cases, there are special programs allowing a certain number of students to transfer. So it really depends on how the state sets up its open enrollment or public school transfer policies. Bottom line, I think what we need to do in Pennsylvania and across the country is make sure that we fund all types of options for families so that this is not an either-or discussion. We shouldn't be debating whether or not we can adequately and effectively fund education or whether we can provide families with choices. We need to do both.
I think in Pennsylvania, it's pretty much you have to establish residency within the school district if it is a public school to a public school environment. Has the COVID-19 pandemic been a benefit or has it impeded school choice across the nation and here in PA?
Well, I certainly wouldn't call COVID a benefit to anything. It's been a tragedy, and but I will say that because of COVID, every family in this country has gotten more involved in their child's education, and they have looked around at their options. And we are seeing an increasing number of parents looking at different schools or learning environments for their kids. 52% of families said last year that they considered or are considering finding a new or different school for their kids. 18% of families went ahead and actually made the switch. That's 1 in 6 kids. So COVID has inspired families to really look at the quality of education their children are receiving and how they are receiving it. We're also seeing families innovate and work together on things like learning pods, micro-schooling, tutoring, you name it.
National School Choice Week is next week. Andrew Campanella is on the line with us this morning. Andrew, as we think about parents and the decisions they must make about whether they want their child to move to another school, that's a pretty rough decision to have to make because, for kids that have spent their entire lives in one school district and to be asked to move to another, it's really something that parents have to give careful consideration to, isn't it, to find the best match for their kids?
Absolutely. It is a very personal decision. And so what I want families listening to know is this. You know more about your child than anybody else out there. You are the expert. And going through this process is not easy, but you can do it, and you can find an environment that works for your child. Will there be barriers along the way? Will there be some stumbling blocks? Will you question yourself? Absolutely. But every parent I've talked to has gone through this process of carefully evaluating their choices, is happy that they went through that process and made a choice, even if the choice was to stay in their zoned public school.
I'm sure that for National School Choice Week, there are a number of resources out there, but even beyond that, at any time, parents might have a question or two, and that the resources are there for them to get those questions answered, yes?
That's right, and we develop, research, and promote the nation's largest portfolio of cost-free and jargon-free school search resources for families, and they're available year-round at schoolchoiceweek.com.
Schoolchoiceweek.com?
Yes, schoolchoiceweek.com. Click on families, and you will find all of the information and a specific roadmap to school choice options in Pennsylvania.
Wonderful, wonderful. Andrew Campanella, thank you so much for joining us today to explain School Choice Week, what it's all about, and why people might want to get involved in it. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
You too.